guys, first let me say it's great to be back in America, and I will be making a vlog about talking about all the stuff I did while I was in Europe for the past 3 months and all that jazz. But this episode I want to talk about something that's kind of very important to me and is a very common trope that I see in a lot of media, so I feel I need to address it and talk about just my pure irritation with the fact that this even exists and how people, even myself, have gotten sucked into it. Alright, so on this week's past episode of Merlin, they introduced Tristan and Isolde, and when the promo pictures for Isolde and Tristan were released, you see Isolde is kind of like this kind of warrior woman. She's got like the pants, the shirt, the little band, and she's got a sword. So when you see her appear thinking, oh, awesome, they zinified her, but sometimes unification can be good, Cinderella 3, and so I was like, alright, we're going to have a kick-butt girl character in this episode. About time. Morgana fails at most things, so let's just have another girl character in it. That's great. Except that after she appears and has her first fight, she gets badly injured, has to be saved by Arthur, and has to be carried around by Arthur and Tristan for the rest of the episode. So, we just got another faux-action girl into the mix. Isn't that great? The faux-action girl is probably one of the most problematic girl tropes that there is, because it gives people the illusion of women doing things when they're not doing a goddamn thing. And it also perpetuates this whole myth that tomboys are better than girly girls. Because if you look at it, most of the time faux-action girls lean towards being tomboys than girly girls. One of the things I feel about the faux-action girl is that it gives people the idea of a false sense of independence and autonomy in these female characters. And it's very frustrating because when you look at some of these characters that are raised as like being these tough girly girls, they're really not accomplishing anything on their own or without the help of somebody. They either don't accomplish anything without the help of someone else, or they fail at most of the things that they try to do. And it's a very common issue, and I want to choose a character that I actually like to explain this trope. Rukia from Bleach. I like Rukia from Bleach. When I used to read Bleach anyway, she is one of my favorite characters in Bleach, but she is such a faux-action girl. In her first appearance, she has to be saved by Ichigo. And after that, she has to teach Ichigo to do stuff. He's the one who really takes control. She does things, but the hero is Ichigo, and she will have her 1 or 2 moments where she will do something, where she will succeed at something. But other than that, she's not being saved by Ichigo. She's being saved by Renji, or she's being saved by Byakuya. And it's incredible to me how a female character, and just a character who is probably the secondary main to Ichigo, I would say, and has probably the second most appearances after Ichigo, and yet she has to be saved by 2 secondary characters, one of which is her brother, who didn't even get along with her until the 2nd season of the Soul Society arc. All of a sudden, she'll be in the middle of something, she can't defeat this character, but then he'll just come and save the day. Even though she's beaten, won a Rancor, she still can't accomplish anything on her own, consistently. It's always someone else having to come and help her out or help her do something. Morgana from Merlin, which I brought up before when I was talking about Merlin. Morgana doesn't accomplish much. She either fails at something she wants to do, or Merlin will come and he'll fix it, or Arthur will come and he'll fix it, and they'll save the day, they'll be the heroes, that's what they do. She gets so much praise for being the strong girl by the fandom when she doesn't accomplish anything. She has very few things that she's achieved by her own, even now in this current episode which is happening where she's taken over Camelot. If it wasn't for Agravain and Helios, she couldn't do it. Because she's always getting stopped by Merlin, by Arthur, by somebody. She can't accomplish things on her own because she's a faux-action girl. She has powers and she can use a sword, so people assume that she's badass, but nothing of consequence comes from that. And that's the issue with all faux action girls, because so many people think that they're doing something awesome when they're really not. And because of that, it perpetuates this myth of the tomboy being better than the girly girl. And that's a big issue, and something that even I had to eventually learn to get my mind out of that system. Because I'll admit, there are characters who I don't like because they're very bubbly and happy and hyper. I'm not always crazy about those characters. Like, I don't like Orihime, I don't like Gome, I don't like Katara, I don't like Megan from Young Justice. I don't like any of those people. I find them kind of annoying and irritating. I don't really care what happens to them in life. However, it doesn't mean that I automatically like all their tomboy equivalents. Because what I kind of realized that the tomboy character is really only used to kind of perpetuate a stereotype of being more like a boy equals better. Being the one who wears pants instead of wearing a skirt automatically makes you more hardcore. And it's taken that people really think that. And I think it's difficult, especially when you're dealing with the issue of a lot of female characters already being written poorly, and then those stereotypes on top of it. Because you want to defend a character who's being hated for a bad reason, but at the same time, they're so poorly written that on top of everything else, they're just a secondary character or a trophy or something to be used by the other male characters, that their character could really have no purpose. Their existence is almost irrelevant to the story, to the point where, what can you defend them with? And I think one of the things I think is sad, it's like in the Merlin fandom, there's this whole thing between Morgana and the character of Gwen. And there's a lot of other aspects about that duality which comes into play, but most people prefer Morgana to Guinevere because they think Guinevere is boring. She's too passive. She can't do anything. Whatever. But Morgana is the badass because she's got sword and magic. Well, I'll just say this: as much as magic and power that Morgana has, she still can't do shit. At least Gwen, she may be passive and she may have those things. At least she doesn't fail at almost every single thing she tries to do. When Gwen does try to actively do something, she gets far ahead in it. She either helps, or she supports her characters, or she at least helps other people get stuff done. Morgana does none of these things. She simply exists to be that stereotypical badass bitch who doesn't do anything but be a badass bitch. But people just soak it up because if you smirk and you're pretty enough and you've got the right amount of on-screen presence, people will assume that you're cooler than you actually are. And it's a really hard thing because so many tomboy characters are written very poorly or written only to appeal to that kind of like outcast, miscast kind of audience. Even characters I like, I can admit, go towards that. Raven from Teen Titans, Toph. I mean, I like Toph a lot. I think she's a really fun character. But in Season 3, she had no other purpose but to just be badass. Which is fine on its own, except that she's a character. And with this entire ensemble cast, and as many people love her and will prefer her to Katara and whatever, and while I think that I do prefer Toph to Katara, it should be noted that Toph, for Season 3, has no real storyline, has no character arc or real growth of any standing, and she's just pretty much there to either be a butt monkey or a badass. That's it. She might as well be an extra because there's not much is done with her to develop her. But yet she gets so much praise for being that badass, even if it is of no consequence. And that's the issue with the faux action girl. Even though I'm not calling Toph a faux action girl, it's that same kind of idea. Because you do one or two cool things or have some sort of way about you, you are somehow better than the more feminine female characters. And it's problematic that you have characters who get hated on just for being sweet or just for being nice or being so kind. You know, it's like the whole Betty and Veronica dynamic, even though there are issues with Betty by herself. But this whole, if you're a badass or you're bitchy, that makes you somehow a better character than the softer, sweeter character. And I'll admit, I have a problem with a lot of female characters who are sweet. But not because they are sweet. It's because, for the most part, the girly girl characters get put into love interest slots and categories where that's all they do and that's all they function with. So that the only thing I have left is that I either like the love interest who's just a love interest, or I like the faux action girl who at least kind of does something even though she doesn't really do anything at all. And so when it comes between those two, you lean more towards the faux action girl and the girly girl, because most of the time they don't know what to do with either of them, but that one's just slightly better. And that's an issue in itself. I think that when these writers are writing these female characters, they need to remember that the reason why people love Xena and Buffy isn't because simply that they were great fighters or great warriors. It's because they had personalities. They had their own storylines. They weren't just there to be badass. They had stories and arcs, and they were main characters. And even when the female character isn't the main character, why can't she still be badass in the moments where she appears? I mean, bringing back Bleach. Byakuya, who is currently turned around, doesn't appear a lot in the manga. But when he does, he kicks some ass. You know? He don't just, like, if you're gonna have a female character who's rarely in there, can't she kick ass when she's there? I mean, how many female characters in Bleach get their ass kicked on a rotation? But the male characters come in and they just kick all kinds of ass out of nowhere. Okay? Matsumoto has one battle, she gets her entire thing ripped out of her. Momo comes in, she gets hurt again. It's just like, why did you bring it? Why are they even here? Why are they even here? So they can be full action girls because them getting hurt makes them even more bad because they were trying. And she's like, poor thing, she tried so hard. No, she just didn't fail from the beginning because she has no purpose but to just be a pretend fighter. And I think an extension of that whole tomboy girly girl thing is that there are characters who will get shat on for no reason but not being stone cold. For example, the whole thing about people preferring Arya to Sansa and people really hating Sansa more than some of the villains and horrible people in the show just because she is not tougher about things, you know? She's a 13-year-old girl who's been raised to have girly ideas. She's not a tomboy. I mean, she wants to get married, have kids. The prince likes her. She want to get with the prince. You know, she's silly, but she's also 13. And it's not like she doesn't grow up as the story continues if you've read the books, and as you'll see in the upcoming seasons. She's a child, and now she's going to start growing up. Arya was always kind of the badass, and people will gravitate towards her because, like, oh yeah, she's a tomboy. She doesn't get shit done. She's a fighter, not like, you know, Sansa. She's such a girl. Blah, blah, blah. Like, yeah, she's a girl. She likes to do girly things. She likes to dress up and dream about princes and wants to date a boy. That's not inherently bad. There are issues with her character, but Arya's not perfect either. But she gets excused because she's got a sword and will stick them with the pointy end. I just think it's very upsetting when you look at these characters who are supposed to be these independent, strong women on paper, and when they appear, they don't do anything. I'm working on this kind of experiment about the Disney princess movies to just see how many of them would actually have survived or gotten to where they went by themselves. You know, it's very sad how little autonomy sometimes female characters are given to be strong on their own, even in a Disney movie. You know, without the sidekicks and without all the other companions, where would they get? And I know people will answer, like, what about the male characters who do the same thing? There is a difference. There is a difference between a male character coming in and doing nothing and a female character coming in and doing nothing. Because for most of these male side characters coming in and doing nothing, you have the main characters who do accomplish things, and they're mostly male. So when you have one or two throwaway male characters who don't accomplish much, it's not really that big of a deal. However, when you have a series that has a handful of female characters who appear regularly and neither of them do anything of consequence except heal or sometimes help with attacking, there's a disparity. You cannot have that uneven of a gender balance and then have that gender balance be even widened by the fact that they don't accomplish anything. It boggles the mind. And even when you have the equivalent of lots of female characters, and then you have the male characters who are there, like, for example, you have Xander on Buffy. Xander is still a dynamic, fleshed out character. He may not be the warrior, but he's still fleshed out. He's still more than just Buffy's friend. He has other roles, he has his own storylines, he has his own character arcs. These girls don't get those same things, and when they do, it mostly has to do with their male characters than anything has to do with themselves. And that's the difference. You take Leo from Charmed or Cole from Charmed. They still had their own stories. They had their own arcs. They may have served a role for the main characters, but they still had a role to play within themselves. The girls don't get this most of the time, and that's the issue. And then you have this whole idea of that because you made them somewhat badass, you have therefore done your duty, and you don't need to do anything else with these characters. And that's wrong. There's something very, kind of twisted when you look at female characters who may have existed in the 50s and 60s, who we may think should have less independence, and actually accomplished more than the ones we have now. I mean, I was just working on my little Disney experiment thingy, and I was just thinking, for all the praise we give to the modern Disney princesses of my generation and of maybe some of our older siblings' generations, for being independent, would they have survived their own movies with their male sidekicks? I mean, you look at any of them: Ariel, Jasmine, Pocahontas, Rapunzel, with the exception of, and even Mulan. Look at how their side characters help them do things. If Sebastian Flounder had not been in the ocean with Ariel during the whole, after she gets transformed into a human, she would have drowned right there because she can't swim. Ariel is supposed to be the beginning of the more independent female leads. And yet, everything that she does needs to be pushed on by her male side characters, and the only other female characters that really exist in the movie that have more than one or two throwaway lines is Ursula, who is supposed to be this huge, unfeminine character. You have to actually have motivation, development, roles in the story. Even if they're just secondary characters, why are you just throwing them away? I mean, Sailor Moon was exceptionally girly, but everyone on that show had their own storyline. Even Tuxedo Mask, okay? And he was fucking useless. He still got to do shit. He still got shit done. I mean, in the beginning of the series, if he hadn't done stuff, Sailor Moon wouldn't have been able to grow up. And eventually, there's still a balance. He accomplishes things, she accomplishes things, the Scouts do their own thing, even the cats get their own storyline. And that's a fucking anime. And you're going to tell me that in Young Justice I have to wait like 12 fucking episodes to have either female character get any sort of development besides being either after Superboy or Kid Flash? Really? And you bring in Zatanna for the first episode and you basically just make her Robin's love interest. It's not until the episode after she gets introduced that she becomes something more than just his love interest. It boggles the mind. Why are you doing this? Why are you developing a relationship before the actual character? I mean, the guys aren't that much better, but at least they're there more, they accomplish more, and you know a little bit more about them. Everyone knows Robin, so there's very little you have to do with him. Aqualad got some shit. Superboy has his angst every goddamn episode, and Kid Flash is just comedy relief, so no one cares what he does as long as he's funny. But the girl characters are two characters that aren't that well known in the DC mainstream audience, and not that many people know Miss Martian or Artemis Crook, whose character has been completely changed. Apparently she's supposed to be half white and half Vietnamese. That Vietnamese side must have been really diluted because she don't look shit like that. Anyway, that's what she is. I'm not going to argue and say she looked differently. But the point of the matter is, they have just started developing these two female characters beyond just the few tropes we've seen about them Megan's the nice one with the catchphrase. Artemis is the badass one who's quiet and mysterious. And it's just like, okay, it's a rehash of Teen Titans, just on that whole thing with Starfire and Raven. But even so, within the first couple episodes, we had development for all of those characters. Whereas in this show, there's a lot of it has great animation, has great storylines, but the characters have shit development. And the girls are even worse because then, on top of being shitly developed, they're pigeonholed into love interest slots without them even being developed first. I mean, what the fuck is that? Why are you developing these relationships before we know what their backstories are? When you watch a show and you look at the female characters that you think are badass, See what they really do. How much do they really accomplish? How bad are they really? What did they really do? Because when you think about it and really look at what they do, you're surprised how little they accomplish by themselves. And the by themselves part is important, because while I will say that men also have their sidekicks and their supporting characters, there's something to be said when a grown woman cannot get out of a room without the help of rats. There's something to be said when a grown woman cannot swim without the help of a tiny fish. Because while Aladdin has a boo, if he didn't have Abu, you don't think he'd be as fucked up. Because even though I love Abu, I could see him not being with Aladdin and Aladdin still getting shit done. Abu just helps with the little pickpocketing and shit. He's just an assistant. He doesn't need Abu to survive. Okay? Whereas with certain female characters, if they didn't have these rats or these little mice and these fish to help them, they would die, or they wouldn't get their happy ending, because they need male rodents and male fish to help them succeed in life. It's fucking hilarious, and that's the society we live in. Grown women need help from fish and rats and tiny dragons.